I introduced myself earlier, but here we got Dan Olson's with NRCS, and then Paul Jones, the landowner. There's kind of a lot of moving parts here in this property more recently. And Paul, you may want to speak to the goals of the property and easement and future work and that kind of thing. But given the wetland values of this property and how they use it with flood irrigation and sub-irrigation, there's a high wetland value here as well, to where, you know, they use these wetlands, they function as wetlands, but they also function to sub-irrigate and flood irrigate the surrounding irrigated meadows that are used for hay. And so that's kind of the win-win with these types of projects. And you know, the wetland values here, there's a pile of ducks just hanging out right up there. That's what we like to see. And these are the types of projects where it comes to infrastructure or protecting them, like what we did with this Beaver deterrent devices. That's kind of what we're looking for, and kind of an advertisement on my behalf for those who might be interested in these kinds of projects. Please get a hold of me. Jesse Kruthaupt with Trout Unlimited does this kind of work as well, and so does the NRCS. And in most cases, we're working together. So, Paul, you want to just talk a little bit about the landowner ownership situation here? Or?
Yeah, we bought this property in '98 and the entire parcel, and the goal was to see if we could kind of do a different type of subdivision. You know, we recognize that land's going to be developed, but was there a way we could take a piece of property and get investors interested in the land, but at the same time do something valuable from a conservation perspective? And so the entire property is about 125 acres. And originally when we purchased it, the stream had been channelized all the way through the property back in the 50s. So we didn't have a really high quality functioning floodplain. Fish habitat was somewhat limited. Our whole goal was to see if we could restore the whole riparian corridor. So the development itself, there's 7 lots on the property. There's 3 clustered on this end, 3 by the road, and then there's 1 lot that's down by the creek. But then the rest of the property, there's about 101 acres that are enrolled in 2 separate conservation easements. The first one was a WRP, Wetland Reserve Program easement with the NRCS that is about 80 acres, and that helped us restore Tamichi Creek to its original meandering channel back in 2005. And then we've been working on the second easement, and this one hasn't gone quite so smoothly, but it's in the WRE program, the Wetland Reserve Easement, I think is what it stands for.
Correct.
Program, which is a similar program where in exchange for an easement in perpetuity, we are doing restoration. We have a project plan. We have 2 more oxbows down here on the west end, and then we have we basically go from the bridge down to you'll see where the second structure that we're looking at today. And so that one, we're stabilizing that reach, and we want to reconnect these 2 oxbows. This particular wetland was a Partners for Wildlife project that I think that one was 2005 as well, 2004, 2005, something like that, where this is an old oxbow slough. Basically, it's an old oxbow from Tamichi Creek that's been separated for a long time, still connected hydrologically to the creek, so we get a lot of groundwater. They put a drain in it years ago, and so the Partners for Wildlife program came in. We put in a diversion structure here that allows us to back the water up and flood it down into another oxbow down here by the river, and we've got a head gate there as well. And so and then we have another series of those projects on the other side of the property as well. But obviously the beavers find this quite attractive. It's a nice big deep pool, and so we're constantly pulling dams out of this. And so when we were approached by Brandon, and looking for a project area, we jumped at the opportunity.
You want to get down and actually look at the structure? It's just right over here. Pretty basic, just some hog panels and T-posts for this one. The way these are designed is that you kind of get that trapezoidal shape. This one probably should have been, have a little bit steeper angle to the sides, but what ends up happening is Beaver will try and build from one end to the other, and when they start to build, they're building on the downstream side, so it's counterintuitive to how they would build a dam. So that actually deters them from actually building a dam. You think, well, why can't they just build something around this? They just won't, because of the angles that are presented to them here. Nothing fancy, like I said, just some hog panels and T-posts. The next stop is a little more complicated, where it's actually a leveler device, where there's the cage protecting the structure, yet there's a perforated pipe going out. So since it's a bigger structure and the way it's all put together, we had to design that one a little bit differently. But this is probably your most basic design and relatively inexpensive as well. So maintaining Beaver in the system and keeping the problems away from this board structure here, where if they end up building a huge dam over the top of this, in a lot of cases, kind of what was described before, you get the actual physical dam locations of these end up getting blown out, end up costing you a lot more money down the road, as opposed to putting a simple structure up, or if you just don't want to fight the Beaver, this is an option. And any culvert irrigation structure, these will work for you. Any questions? Or
so the shape basically messes with Beaver psychology?
Yeah, I can't speak to their psychology, but yeah.
Usually, there'd be more current coming, so when they can't really dam up against the sides, if that current was coming. Yes, so like this, like Brandon was saying, it's backwards of what they would normally build on, but on a culvert going under a road, you'd have this up and they'd build it, and even if they do on that leading edge try to dam up, the water just comes over and runs to where it's not going to wash the road out. But yeah, as far so that current's coming this way, if you got a good trapezoid, that water's actually keeps pushing that material away from there.
And these still do need maintenance. I don't want to claim that they're going to solve all the Beaver problems there are, but they will reduce maintenance to some degree.
Is there a minimum difference or distance that the trapezoid has to be? Like, could you cut it short, or does it have to be a certain length out?
There's kind of some general guidelines on that, and it's just kind of all written down, not in my head. But yeah, you want it to, you want it to make it more difficult. If this was something real small, I think they'd easily be able to build on it. So I think it's
about the minimum.
Yeah, they're usually fairly large. Yeah. And Dan, you built one down there at Neversink. There's another one that. How's that one working?
Well, that maintenance thing, that was a huge issue with that.
Sure. There's a lot of water.
That water came up, and there's all this, all the loose vegetation came up and washed against it, and then when the water came up some more, it had plugged that, and just the sheer weight of it just kind of collapsed itself. And I should have been cleaning that off for the Park Service. It's on Park Service ground, and there the constraints with the rocks and everything. I was not able to build a big trapezoid. It's more of a parallelogram and little geometry lesson. But yeah, it's done well, though, as far as keeping the beavers out of that.
When our irrigation water's on, this thing is flowing, because all of the basically a bunch of the ditches tail out into the slough, plus the groundwater is the spring is kind of just past where those cars are parked, and it's constantly pulling water in. So the volume of water that's moving through here right now, you know, it's just the end of the season, and we've got it up for waterfowl as they come in. They feed in here really. They love it in here in the evenings, and so usually in the summer when the beaver are in here and there are the problem, we have a lot more water flowing through it. So, but right now it's the flow is pretty minimal, and we'll pull some of the boards before things start icing up so that we've got some capacity in the spring.
You've had beaver come out and try to mess with it?
Yeah, no, that we've had it. They've filled so the culvert runs underneath this ditch, and they've plugged it about halfway back.
With this in?
Not with this in.
Have
This
they
was
done
only
anything
put in.
since this has been in?
No,
Just
this
come
has
out and
only
try
been in
anything?
about a week.
Oh, okay.
So a week and a half, something like that. So
Also, something on the bottom.
Yeah,
Lower
there's
end.
also the one things the beaver can do, but this is unlikely, but they can crawl through that culvert and move material in that way. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll take sticks and whatnot and just jam them into these culverts a long way, and it's just another problem they cause. So in this case, we put a little cage on the bottom end as well.
How far down do you have the fences or the panels buried? Is it like a foot or 2 feet?
So what are these? These are what, 6 foot or
I think
8
so.
foot?
The-
6 foot
they're
T-posts.
6 foot, but they put
There's a floor in here too. There's a
I
whole.
was about to ask.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll actually, you have to have a floor in these, or else they're going to be useless. Because they'll end up. I should have mentioned that earlier. They'll just go right underneath and move material in through their ability to tunnel.
Unless you have a good rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have hog panel laying down on the
Yeah.
the bottom there?
There's
There's
hog
a-
panel on the
There's a
bottom,
hog
too.
panel
Yeah.
floor that matches
Okay,
the geometry
exactly.
of the structure.
Yep.
Do they chew your boards up?
They have in the past.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, they will
They'll-
notch these
they'll
boards.
chew your boards and then put a dam in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll let the water
They
out
don't like
of that.
dimensional lumber.
Did you build this on the ground and then put it in place then? With the floor?
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. Just kind of measure it out, build it on the ground, and then just set it in. But if this thing, I mean, there's another way to do this. Is if you can, this is probably impossible to dry out. But some of these you can drain, dry out, and build these in place. Not in this case. I think there's just, who knows where this water's coming from.
Yeah, there's a big spring right in there.
Yeah,
It's constantly discharging water.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have you constructed something like this with a very high volume current? Because we've got places in Lake City, I'm just thinking about the flow itself. We've got so much debris from avalanche that, I mean, it would be a pretty much daily job to keep them clean. Have you had success in areas where you have high volume flow with a lot of debris?
I have not, but I'd have to look into that as far as other people's, what that design would look like. I don't know that I would do this with T-posts in this situation like that. I have seen them built with, what are those iron bars called? Rebar? I have seen them built out of rebar too, which is a little tougher, but more directly in front of the structure. But it's still going to take maintenance. You know, if you probably going to have someone out there often during that time when it's the biggest issue.
Yeah, it's been my experience that when you have a huge volume of water like that, bringing down a bunch of beavers ain't screwing with it anyway. Yeah, so you could just remove it. Mostly when beavers are doing it is because they want to save that water. When there's an abundance of water everywhere, it's not such a big deal to them. So yeah, to save your structure, you could remove it out the avalanche debris and the high water, and then as it starts dropping, you start seeing some beaver activity. Then it's time to do your beaver deceiver.
Do you think this would work like on most ranchers' head gates that are coming out of, as an example, Savoia Creek, where they've got a rock diversion, slowing the water down, then putting it into the head gate? I don't know if that would work or not. Have you guys tried any of that with actual rivers? or creeks, big creeks and streams.
I know they do it a lot in the Midwest and back east where they have lower gradient streams, but something like Savoya, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Where
Well, that's the main problem up there is the ranchers.
Sure.
You know, they get in there
Yeah.
later on in the irrigating system. They'll go ahead and start plugging up there, and so it's a constant battle of trying to
Yeah.
keep that cleaned out. So I don't know.
I've been wondering about that too, and
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what to do
Yeah.
there. But Jesse, you know of any?
I don't. I know. I don't think there's been great success with these type of structures within an irrigation ditch. Just the geometry of the ditch.
Yeah.
It
Well, they
doesn't
come
work.
through through the head gate. But
Maybe.
they've always got that. They've got the bank, and then they've also got an arm out there to divert, to slow down the river and then bring the water into it.
I think if there's a room, you could probably build something like this. But again, you're going to have the maintenance with debris and
Yeah.
stuff clogging up.
Well, like you say, don't do it in the spring during high water. Just let it go. But it's later on, during this the end
I
of
think a
June
lot
and
of guys
stuff.
use, just a grade
Yeah.
over that they, when the beavers build that up.
Clean
they
it
pull
out,
it out.
right.
And it's not plugging the actual pipe, it's keeping all that material out where you can reach it and clean it up. It's still, minimize your work a little bit. Hope they'll,
Did they ever come in from that side over the top of the head gate and pack it in there? Or have you witnessed that?
From through the pipe or?
No, over the top.
No,
jump
they
in.
they typically won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the other structure we have over there, they would they'd plug it up, and if what we ended up doing before we put in the new structure, we had a bunch of old T-posts that we put in at an angle, and then we I wired a big grate over the top of it because they were trying to if they couldn't get through the T-posts, they'd try and drop stuff down into it. And that was a constant battle. That head gate has been a nightmare.
Huh.
And
I guess you could just fence around the top too. So
yeah.
Yeah, if they start doing that, it would be pretty easy fix. Yeah.
I've seen where they even leave like a little section right here so that the beaver can get in, but they can't bring material in, and then they can get back out.
Huh.
That's like something else that I've seen folks do.
And in this one, I think that's why they doubled it up.
Yeah.
They offset those panels so that smaller beaver
Yeah.
shouldn't be able to get through there.
Yeah, I think if one wanted to get out, they'd probably just swim out the pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesse, I don't know when you wanted to give your talk, or we want to go to look at the other one first?
Yeah, we can go look at the other one.
Okay. Yeah.
So this structure is supposed to give us water and keep the critters out. So we're actually going to see on this one.
Exactly. So Dan talked about this in his presentation. This is called a pond leveler, basically. So the beaver can build on this, and it still may be a maintenance issue, but there's always going to be water moving through this pipe. This is a perforated pipe. I think there's about 40 feet of it there, or a little more. And it's been scored. That you were asking me about, it floating. It's been scored, so it's not going to float, which means they just took a saw on the top of it. And it looks like they attached some bricks to it, which I didn't know they were going to do, but if that helps it sink. So if this thing, Paul's gone on vacation a couple weeks during irrigation season and no one's out here, water's still going to be moving through this structure. They checked this thing up, and this thing subs out, flows through the siphon to the wetlands, as well as flows out into an irrigation ditch you walked over here. So I think that's how this thing functions, as well as the wetland benefits it provides. So just trying to reduce maintenance for the landowner, and as well as this being a demonstration to bring all you out to see and try and promote.
So this summer will be the test for this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a big dam on this thing.
Yeah.
Big dam.
Yeah. See the remnants. And there's a lodge right over here. Most of the beaver that we have in this reach, they're bank beaver, but they do build a lodge right underneath this dead cottonwood. There's a big lodge. And, we could kill beaver out here, but we just kill beaver all the time, you know, and it's a constant battle. So why not try to figure out how to live with them? And in the long run, they do some other great things on the creek for us. So, but this particular headgate has been a frustration. There've been many nights where I've gone back to the house pondering shotgun time, but
Sure.
a couple of beers in and stuff, and I decided, all right, I'll give them another chance. So this will be interesting to see how this one works. So.
Have the beaver moved into the abandoned channel at all, Paul?
Oh yeah, no, they moved in there as soon as that was, as soon as we were done working in there. So the abandoned channel receives, because it's lower elevation, when you straighten the creek, you increase the velocity. When you increase the velocity, you increase the erosive power. And when the creek is confined by berms on either side, the only place that it can release some of that energy is by excavating down. And so the bed of the channelized reach is lower than this bed here, right? We took basically 3,000 feet of stream and reduced it to about 1,800 feet of stream. And so what you do then is you take that distance and replace it with an elevational drop. And so we have a lot of groundwater that still moves through that old channel, plus the gravel pit. When they pump, their discharge comes into the creek through an old ditch. And so that creek always has, or that portion of the channel has had water in it since this was done. And those beaver got in there, and there wasn't a lot. One of the people building over there one of the builders had a trash fire in the spring, and the wind caught it and burned across the hay meadow and burned up a bunch of trees. And so the insurance company gave us a settlement, and we used that to wrap a bunch of our mature cottonwoods, because the beaver were hitting those pretty hard and we wanted to maintain those. So they didn't have a lot of material to work with, and they actually pushed up, those dams are primarily cobble. They pushed up bowling ball sized rocks all the way across, and then stacked a whole bunch of dead stuff on top of them. But there's at least 3 dams there. Like I say, there's a lodge here, and there's a big, huge food cache down where that old channel joins the restored reach. So there's at least 2 big pods of activity with beaver at either end of this old channel. But yeah, they moved in there and started building right away. And now that we've got a lot of cottonwoods and young willows coming in, they're continuing to build in there, which is fine with us, because it builds a really nice set of pools that they're pretty isolated. They don't get fished much, or they don't get fished at all. So shorebirds, waterfowl, stuff like that really like it in there. It's nice, quiet, secluded spot.
There's other projects like this too. I know my counterpart in Northwest Colorado, he's done these projects where it's not necessarily dealing with irrigation, but you're dealing with the elevation of a beaver dam. So what they'll end up doing is you can notch a beaver dam, and you can run these perforated pipes through them, and you end up with a cage on each side of the pipe, similar to what you have here. So you can maintain that dam to only check up so much water. So they can, same as they would here, they can build the dam to the top of the fence and build something massive, but your elevation is always going to be where that pipe is. So there's another solution. There was someone whose house was at risk of, they really liked the beaver, and their house was at risk of, if that beaver dam went, all that water was going to basically end up on their house downstream. And so that's what he did. He went in and he put, I think, 3 or 4 of these types of pipes through that structure. There's several ways to think about these things and solve these problems if beaver are welcome on the landscape, and that's kind of why I'm here today. And if anyone wants to do any of this kind of work, please reach out. Want to go give a talk in the meadow?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jesse Kruthaupt, everybody. I work for Trout Unlimited in the Upper Gunnison Basin, and that's basically all the tributaries that flow into Blue Mesa and the Aspinall unit. And Eric had asked me to talk a little bit just about different water projects in the Upper Gunnison, some of the stuff that I'm working on with in relationship with the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. Some of you I've worked with in the past, others I haven't. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of what is, it's called the Watershed Management Planning Effort, and that's spearheaded by the local Water Conservancy District. And really their objective is to try to develop strategies and to protect irrigators, landowners in the face of reduced water supply and maybe more frequent drought years, and and doing that through infrastructure improvements, upgrading diversion structures, head gates, irrigation control structures out in meadows like this, and also wetland levees, that type of thing to better distribute the water. So there's a whole suite of options out there right now, and one of my roles that I'm working with the district on is just landowner outreach. So it's actually going out and meeting with landowners on the ground, looking at their places and talking about what kind of ideas they have, what kind of challenges or issues they have, and just trying to brainstorm how to address them. And along with that, obviously you have a project you want to improve your property. A lot of these water projects take a significant amount of investment. So the other part of my job is to kind of round up the grant funds, the dollars on the ground, to be able that you can get the project moving forward, whether it be technical assistance on design or the financial assistance on actually getting the contractor and rocks and materials on in the creek or in your field, what have you. So with that, I just wanted to let everyone know to feel free to reach out to me anytime. Either I can give you a card, or you can call the Conservancy District, and they'll get you in touch with me as well. And but really the next thing I was going to talk about is just there's a ton of different funding opportunities out there right now within Colorado and federally as well. Even starting from that watershed management planning, they have some technical assistance dollars where they have a contracted engineer, and he can come on site, give you cost estimates, give you some rough 30% design, and then it kind of gives you a bump into what their annual grant program. The Conservancy District, they have an annual grant program. It closes on the end of February. So they'll do a posting on their website and do some outreach in the newspaper in December, January, and then folks have to get their application in by the end of February for the board to review them. It's a real straightforward application process. Generally, they ask 50% match from landowners, and then they can cost share it on the other 50%, and that oftentimes can be dovetailed with a state fund. And has anyone heard of the Colorado Water Conservation Board? Does that ring a bell to anybody? Okay, a couple. So that's a state entity under the Department of Natural Resources. You got the Division of Water Resources, who are the water commissioners, right? They go out and check head gates and flumes, et cetera. And then the Colorado Water Conservation Board is a separate entity, and their focus is conserving water within the state and protecting it. They have, over the years, it's really gotten, I guess back in 2005, I can't remember, they started these basin roundtables, and there's individual representatives from, say, the Gunnison Basin. There's a handful of folks up here that sit on the roundtable. There's also some folks from like the Montrose, Grand Junction area for the Gunnison Basin. They all have kind of our district representatives. There's a pool of funds. You can reach out to those guys, and the pool of funds is called the Water Supply Reserve Fund. And you have to apply through the roundtable. I'll think of a couple names. Sonia Chavez is on the roundtable. She's also the district manager at the Conservancy District. Kathleen Curie is on the roundtable. I think Greg Peterson is also. Bill Nesbitt's another fellow. Those are all, I don't know if any of those names ring a bell, but those are some of the folks you can reach out to get more info on that. So that's one branch of the CWCB. It's kind of, the water supply. I kind of think of it. There's a range of projects you can apply for, whether it's environmental improvements or infrastructure. There's another really significant grant program that the CWCB holds is called the Colorado Water Plan grants, and over the last 6 years, the Colorado Water, actually it was Hickenlooper that said Colorado's going to develop a water plan. So the roundtables all put in their 2 cents on how they would foresee Colorado's water future, right? And then there's all kinds of projects on that list. So they came up with this water plan fund to try to get some of those projects completed. And the water plan fund is now getting funding from like sports betting. That was, I think it was Proposition DD a few years back. And they also have some severance tax and then some stimulus dollars. So there's actually a pretty big pool of funds right now with the CWCB that can get out the door through that water plan grant program. And again, they can be agricultural projects. They have different categories, right? You can be an agricultural focused project, an environmental project, a planning type of project. What I found, and any one of those can be an individual applicant, like as a landowner. Sometimes it's a little bit of a heavy lift. There's some contracting and stuff with the state, but an individual could do it. Part of my role at TU is to kind of help facilitate that contracting process, make it easier on the landowners and insurance requirements, etc. But what we can do is match those funds against Upper Gunnison funds to kind of keep that landowner cost to a minimum. They're out of pocket to a minimum. Those are kind of two pretty readily available pools of funding for water projects. Another one that's more recent is the Colorado River District Community Partnership Program, and that was on the ballot a couple years ago too as well. It was a 7A. It was a it's a mill levy essentially that goes into a pool specifically to protect western slope water, and it can be agricultural projects, environmental projects, recreation type projects. So that's another pool. However, it's with that community, they call it the Community Partnership Program. We're able to tap that fund this summer on one project already, and it's not a real it's a pretty streamlined process, but it definitely takes a large partnership to get it done because you need county commissioner support. You need, it has to be multiple benefit type of project. And one on the Gunnison that we just completed was where we had combined a couple of adjacent head gates. They're almost right in parallel to each other within, pulling diversions right off the creek next to each other. And the upper one was continually washing out the lower one, but they'd have to go back in the creek annually and maintain it. So combining those two head gates, putting in a return structure to handle debris and some sediment issues, and also reduce entrainment for trout. It was, a couple $100,000 project, and be able to use CWCB, Upper Gunnison, Colorado River District funding to get it done. Those are the kind of partnerships that they're looking for, as you're bringing other funding to the table.